There's a lot of people that are helping people, and there are not that many people that are helping animals, especially farm animals. And so I think it's important to help anybody who's suffering, including animals. And I think by helping animals, we also improve the human condition. Cruelty to animals is bad for animals, but it's also bad for people. I feel badly for the person who works in the slaughterhouse and where all they do for 8 hours a day is cut the throats of animals. So at Farm Sanctuary, we're trying to help the animals, we're trying to help the workers, we're trying to protect the environment, we're trying to promote a healthier way of living. So it's for animals, all animals, including human animals.
Is it like standing up for the ones that cannot stand up for themselves?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, farm animals are among the most abused and least recognized creatures on our planet. And that's why we started Farm Sanctuary back in 1986, to draw attention to these individuals who had no voice. And they still don't really have a voice. And so that's why Farm Sanctuary exists, and that's why we encourage people to get involved with our work.
Do a lot of people call you crazy, or think there's a problem with you for being that involved with animals?
Well, there have been times where people have thought I'm crazy, but I honestly think that the way our world operates is kind of crazy. We've been called radical for not eating animals, but I think it's kind of radical to have to cut people's hearts open to stitch them together because they're clogged with fat that doesn't need to be there. So it all depends on what one's definition of normal is and what one's definition of crazy is. I think basically when it comes to animal farming, bad has become normal. I also think that in terms of the way we eat in the U.S. and in many other countries, bad has become normal. And we're eating in a way that is causing horrible suffering for animals, that is killing ourselves because this stuff's not healthy, and is destroying the planet because it's not sustainable to grow animal foods. It's much more efficient to grow plant foods. So to me, that type of activity is crazy, and I think I would welcome an open discussion with anybody who wants to have it about those very issues, and to look at the empirical data and to make evidence or make decisions based on the evidence. So I think that that's what I would say to this idea of what is crazy. People who tried to free the slaves were called crazy. People who used to say that the earth wasn't flat were called crazy. So over the years, many people have been called crazy that eventually we recognized had a pretty good idea or had a point that was important to take into consideration. And I think when it comes to animals, we're now recognizing more and more that they're not that different than us in terms of their ability to feel, in terms of the relationships they develop, in terms of their emotional lives. And doing what we do to them is really unnecessary, and it's repulsive. And I think when most people look at it and allow themselves to see it clearly, would agree with that position. And so I don't think it's crazy at all, ultimately.
So you don't consider yourself a dreamer at all?
Well, I'm definitely a dreamer. I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one.
Okay.
In a world that is not, polluted, we don't, generally people don't like to see animals abused. It's kind of the rare miscreant that likes to see cruelty to animals. So what I'm saying isn't really that crazy. And I think most people would have the same basic values and same basic feelings about this stuff. But unfortunately, we've developed certain bad habits that have become institutionalized and systematized and then rationalized and defended. And we're trying to shake that up and say, let's look at this and let's ask ourselves what makes sense. And the way we're doing things now doesn't make sense when we look at it empirically. And so I think that, most people, on the surface would like to kind of label vegans and animal activists as crazy. But when you look at it more deeply and you look at the evidence, I think vegans have a very strong case to make. And I think over time, our arguments will continue to gain traction, and I think they will be adopted increasingly. And I think we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see the United Nations talking about how the livestock industry is a bigger contributor to global warming than the entire transportation industry. We're seeing New York Times running editorials criticizing industrial animal farming. We see the Pew Commission come out and talk about the problems of factory farming. We're seeing huge institutions now coming out. Johns Hopkins University has some great folks there talking about these issues. So, I think that over time the truth comes out. I think Martin Luther King said the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And I think that's true. And Mahatma Gandhi said, we want to bring people to their senses, not to their knees. I think that's also sort of starting to happen. As people learn about this stuff, I think increasingly they're making choices that are more in line and more in tune with their own values and their own interests. And that's what we ask, people to think about what they're doing and to act in a way that's consistent with their own values and their own interests. And most people don't like cruelty to animals. Most people don't like to eat foods that give them heart disease and cancer. Most people don't like to support an agricultural system that's destroying water and ecosystems and contributing to global warming. Most people don't want to do that. It's not in their interest. So people just should think about what they're doing and act in a way that makes sense. It's really all we're saying.